Hi guys, so we're here at another UX picnic, which is pretty cool, and we just had UX New Zealand, and we're here with Chris Jackson, who is from DNA, gave a really interesting talk about the Internet of Things. Hey Chris.
Hello.
How you going?
Good.
Mate, I found the talk really interesting.
Thank
I
you.
really liked it. How did you get into Internet of Things?
It's almost one of those things like user experience or service design where lots of people come from different places to get into that space. It's obviously not a degree or something that people sort of offer within universities, but I organised a Fab Lab conference and started the first Fab Lab in Australasia in 2012, and through that process they were playing around with connected devices and 3D printing things and using Arduinos and things like that. When I left the job that started off that Fab Lab, moved into more service and experience work, my background in industrial design meant the sort of culmination of those spaces of, you know, physical products, services and experiences and data and all that stuff coming together within IoT just seemed like a natural progression to use those skills that I've developed sort of over the last 10, 12, 13 years.
Yeah, sure. And so how do you think UX will actually fit into the Internet of Things? It's a pretty interesting angle now, right? I mean, taking it from that soft kind of world to actual things that we touch and feel and play with in that tactile space. How do you think it'll fit in?
I suppose that was the sort of crux of the talk, really. Trying to, yes, screens are going to be present and we're going to use them and do all that stuff, but there's this really rich space of physical interaction, gestural interaction, all these other things that start to get really exciting that maybe historically have belonged in a more industrial design space or in interactions in museum exhibits or whatever it might be, that suddenly they open up to us these new possibilities, and as UX designers or service experience designers, whatever you want to call it, you get these great opportunities to broaden your practice and your frames of reference that goes beyond that typical notion of interacting with a screen. So to me, that's a really exciting thing. I love the tactility of things and the culture of objects and the history of objects and all that stuff. And to me, bringing that back into this conversation, or bringing that into this conversation, and I referenced Jason Mezet's talk in terms of bridging that digital physical divide. That's something that's really exciting, and there's a whole load of opportunity in that for experienced designers of whatever sort you want to call that. Super exciting space, super fruitful, lots more opportunity that broadens people's practice, and we've got to be part of the conversation. We can't let technology or big companies start to tell us what things are going to roll out and how they're going to be. It's really up to us to go, this is what it's about, this is the value proposition for all these different things, these are the users, these are the people using this stuff, and they're really important. And we've got to turn these really rich opportunities into a reality and not have eye kettles and the other stuff that I talked about before.
That's crazy. So what do you think for this, and I heard you had a crazy stat about how many were going to be there by 2020, but
it's a really interesting statistic in terms of what I talk about hype cycle, not using the hype cycle, talk about different companies who are trying to control the pipes at the moment, who are the money's in the infrastructure. It's almost like the architecture thing that the Studio Pacific guys alluded to earlier on. It's maybe there's no money in it, and it's this thing that designers get lumped with all the time. They're so passionate about design, they're not necessarily very good business people, they want to do what they do, and they end up not being part of the cut of the money. At the moment, it's people like IBM and Cisco who are driving the infrastructure and facilitating the movement of data and everything else. And it's guys like that who are saying, Well, to 2020, it could be 20 billion devices, it could be 50 billion devices. MIT are doing research at the moment around nano connected devices, and if they are their way, then that would pump up to sort of 200, whatever it is, 200 million billion. Well, it's just crazy amounts of stuff. All of the dumb stuff that sits around you, all that ubiquitous stuff that you think nothing of, toothbrushes, whatever it might be, suddenly becomes connected to the web, and we can't really process that amount of numbers.
That's amazing.
And what it turns into in terms of data and what that means, and I think Boone made that really good point of, it's not about big data. We'll have so much data. How do we store it? How do we store it for massive amounts of time? In terms of keeping its integrity, how do we make sense of these massive data sets? And to me, that's a really big challenge going forward. Is so what do we do with all this petabytes and whatever they'll become from all these billions of devices, and what actually happens?
It's incredible. I mean, it's unbelievable. But what about the opportunities? I mean, there must be, with challenges, also there's a huge opportunity, right?
Yeah. I always think challenges are the opportunities.
Okay.
So those things that we touched on of, I didn't touch on them purposefully, like the privacy and the security stuff. I just left out of there because it becomes such a bone of contention for so many people. But I think when you think about privacy and security, we think about the web as it is now, and we think about all the stuff that's happened with NSA and Snowden and all this stuff that rolls out of that, and all those ethical implications. But what happens if you had a new web? What happens if you had a web that sits over the existing web? And what happens if that is a web that runs on blockchain, and it's a trustless web, and actually and these are conversations that are happening within the community. It's not pie in the sky stuff. It's like these things are conversations. You have a trustless web that runs on blockchain, similar to Bitcoin, whatever it is. Security is no longer an issue. So we think about things in a way that we think about the web now, and we make judgments on that without understanding necessarily that something could be solved quite easily, and suddenly it becomes a non-issue, and then what's your argument for not doing something?
Yeah, and I like that video where you showed looking back in 94 or whenever it was, and seeing someone going, it's the @ symbol, what is internet?
You couldn't see that you couldn't see that in that point of time when Tim Berners-Lee first was doing stuff with the web. There was an article in the Sun newspaper, that really quality rag in the UK, the Sun, an amazing newspaper, and it had Tim Berners-Lee in the newspaper saying, there's this geek and he thinks he's into and he's invented this thing and it's called the World Wide Web, and who does he think he is? What a load of rubbish, and all this stuff, just panning this new invention.
Sounds like my uncle.
And now it's interwoven into society. How many times do you sit there and you're on a train and everyone's looking at their phone, and it's about information, and it's about the web, and we're connected, and we talk about futurism and future forecasts. We can't see it most of the time. We think we can speculate about it, and it is only when we look back in hindsight that we're able to actually put some facts and figures and history and measure the impact and everything else. But when it's coming at us, we find it really hard to see.
So we've got things like the iKettle, which was a really interesting example of a problem that's not actually a problem.
But works for some people, like some people told me.
Yeah, that's right.
They're like, I love that kettle, that's what I need in my life.
But what's next? So is it going to be a series of more of those types of devices, or is it more of the nano technology and more, have we still got a longer road to go, or are we able to start getting cracking on actual devices?
I think the point that I made in the talk is, and this is what Alex says, IoT Watch on Twitter, check that out. she talks about the most exciting stuff happening in the consumer space for IoT is small bootstrap teams of 3 people playing with Arduino, playing with a 3D printer, doing it in their spare time, trying to make things happen, and using Kickstarter funding, whatever. It's not that traditional, it's not what we know as that disruptive software innovation cycles. It takes more time. It's not disruptive innovation. It's more iterative types of innovation, and it takes longer, and manufacturing things takes longer, and testing them out takes longer. And she talks about when you invest in an IoT startup or a product or whatever it is, the ROI times that you're thinking about is not 2 years, it should be more like 7 years. Yeah. So it's a long haul thing as well. It's a time thing, it's a cyclical thing. It's not super quick. We're used to this super quick stuff, and I make the analogy in the talk as well that it's we're used to the web, and we're used to being plugged in permanently, and we're used to connectivity all the time, and the Internet of Things won't be like that. It's less connected. There could be more latency, different types of lag. How do we change people's expectations of what the web is and how we interface through a screen? And it's pretty constant and steady, and we have user flows and all these things that we understand to go into a world that's a little bit more jittery, a little bit different. It's physical. There's all these other things that we need to think about, and to me, again, talking about challenges and talking about opportunities, it's a challenge, but it's a great opportunity. It's we're going to see these changes culturally, behaviourally, and we have to design for that change.
So exciting, mate. Fantastic. Thanks for joining us on The Picnic.
Cheers.